You say you cannot assist me? Similarly frustrated you seem to be? Well, allow me to suggest an idea from that burden to set us free. To act without acting is the key, can't you see? To shout and complain, to show our discomfort, yet back it up with no further action to drive change. Agree? No? Sure, feel free to disagree. But be prepared to go against your nature. Never forget, the path of least resistance is the sole true human decree. Καλησπέρα. Good evening. Buenas tardes. Dobry wieczór. You're listening to After the Dragon, a reflective, existential podcast about navigating life changes. A very much delayed episode 5, I will leave my apologies for the end. Let us begin. 11:20 p.m., February 28, 2023. Tempi, Greece. A delayed train from Athens to Thessaloniki was racing to make up for lost time. Inside, there were over 350 passengers. But many of those passengers would never reach their destination. Because a freight train barreling down the same tracks in the opposite direction sealed their fate. At 11:21, they collided head-on. The toll was massive, 57 deaths and 85 injured. A whole nation woke up numbed and angry, facing the deadliest rail disaster in their history. In a truly modern democratic European state, a disaster of the scale would ignite a massive scandal, a wake-up call for change in a wary society. But Greece is not truly a modern democratic European state. You may have heard the news that Greece's leaders boast about credit upgrades and growth rates and foreign investments, yet its citizens remain among the poorest in Europe. The glossy exterior just hides a crumbling foundation. For instance, Greece features the second to last GDP per capita in the EU, the worst freedom of speech index scores in the bloc, and tanking almost every part of the OECD Better Life indexes except health and work-life balance. Groceries compared to local wages are highly expensive, the energy market is the same, the systemic banks race against each other in offering the least competitive offerings to the market, and as an actual Greek, please trust me that I can continue such a list for virtually forever. So functionally speaking, Greece is not a modern democratic European country, and its reaction to the Tempi train disaster reflects that. After the incident, the Minister of Transportation decided to resign, but faced no prosecution. In a display of political dynastic resilience, he reappeared on the ballot in the next election and was instantly re-elected. And the investigations were frankly a sum, marked by weak cover-ups, unexplained gaps, missing recordings, and critical delays in handling key evidence. To this day, no real justice has been served. This is why, after some recordings resurfaced on January 2025, people in Greece decided to head to the streets. On Sunday, the 26th of January 2025, hundreds of thousands of people gathered in cities all around the country and even abroad to commemorate the victims, to remind politicians that Tempi is still in everyone's mind. In fact, it will stay there until there will be punishments, until there will be change. The government's knee-jerk reaction to the protest was a silly attempt to cover the significance. But when this didn't work, creating even more outrage, Kyriakos Mitsotakis and other members of the ruling party had to try to make amends with the public. Of course, I'm just kidding, they didn't do this. Kyriakos Mitsotakis' 40-minute TV interview following the protest was the epitome example of a prime minister who's fully detached from their people. And the outrageous public comments that followed from high-ranking officials like Avanos Georgiadis didn't really help, which, as you might guess, created even more outrage. Leading us to where we are now. Today is February 27th, 2025, and tomorrow, Greece is preparing once more to protest, as tomorrow is Tempi's disaster 2-year anniversary. Tomorrow has the potential to become the biggest social mobilization in the country's recent history, definitely bigger than Sunday's 26th protests. But they may not be enough. In Greek we have a saying, ένας κούκος δεν φέρνει την άνοιξη, which translates to one cuckoo won't bring the spring. And one protest by itself won't bring the change. Especially if protests of the like enable people to play the role within the system, to think they have protested while by protesting they enable the status quo. This is exactly the kind of ideological trap that Slavoj Zizek warns about. Who is Slavoj Zizek? He is a modern-day philosopher originating from current-day Slovenia. He has a strong focus on current political, economic, and societal issues, and you can say that he is fighting a crusade against ideologies. For Zizek, ideologies are not just a set of political beliefs, but the unconscious framework through which we interpret reality. Every one of us is immersed in one, and fully being aware of the fact is a pivotal step for actual change. As part of his work, he critiques forms of resistance that are not only permitted but encouraged. And he's referring to the ones that are grandiose as they are marketable, that they feel important yet they lack any real meaning. If you cannot think of an example, we can refer to Sunday's 26th protest. Because the protest happened, social and traditional media flared up, the nation felt a surge of collective defiance, but then Monday came. People returned to the routines, the same government, the same corruption, the same daily struggles. The protest felt like resistance, but was it? Or was it, as Zizek might argue, that this was another ritual that ultimately reinforces the system we claim to fight? Yes, the protest was ideological, but the continuation of everything else was also ideological, as it reinforces the same system one's supposed to be opposing. Can you see the point a bit clearer? Zizek's critique of ideology is precisely this. We believe that we are resisting when, in reality, we are enforcing the same thing we claim to fight against. A system does not survive merely through brute force. It survives because we internalize its logic, because we are a living part of it. We protest one day and then we go back to work the next, convinced that a single act of protest itself was enough. And it's not that the protests themselves are wrong, quite the contrary. Any mobilization of that scale when things go south for the people is a step in the right direction. We saw how one strong solidary instance, in this case, was enough to unveil the incompetence of the current government, yet breaking free would mean stepping beyond the act of systemic single-time show protesting and reflecting on how one's daily decisions fuel the very thing one opposes. Real change begins with recognizing and resisting the subtle ways the system co-opts even acts of one's rebellion. Real change occurs when one comes to the painful realization of seeing that they view everything in life with an ideology, with their bad faiths. And to make a reference to the previous episodes of After the Dragon, with how one goes out protesting, wearing the costume of a lion, while their camel hams are in full display. Tempi disaster and everything that followed suit for the last 2 years remains not just a tragedy, but a mirror. It reveals not only the failures of the state, but the ways in which we, its citizens, keep those failures alive. And as this is a reflective existential podcast, this is where I will stand. Since the Greek case is not only relevant for Greeks, but everyone who wishes to drive change in themselves. Actual, meaningful change. Because, let's think of it. Us Greeks for the past 15 years or so have constantly demanded change. Change from whom? From corrupted politicians, from money-blinded oligarchies, from weak, incompetent institutions. What would be the incentive for these actors, the benefactors of the current system, to change, when the real people are not even willing to bring change to themselves? Every person responsible for allowing and attempting to cover what happened at Tempi should face justice. There is no question about it. But even if that happens, nothing truly will be altered. Another Tempi can be around the corner because the same chair will govern no matter the figurehead in charge. I secretly hope that us Greeks will find the strength to change ourselves, to stop hitting our heads on the same wall, hoping that the wall will break next time, to resist in ways that matter, to gather and collaborate in forms of protest that create, not distract, and to show up for all this, not only once, but continuously. Tomorrow will be a monumental day for us Greeks, but after tomorrow, what will we do? Will we return to routine? Or will we commit to this kind of change that doesn't fade by March's morning? One protest won't bring us the spring we desire. If we collectively want real change, tomorrow should only be the beginning. You have reached the end of this episode, and I gladly thank you for that. Allow me to apologize for its delay. Technical issues with the microphone haven't really been of much assistance for me, but we're hopefully back for good. For sources, Slavoj Zizek's movie The Pervert's Guide to Ideology is a strong starting point of his manifesto, although there are countless videos and interviews of him discussing all sorts of topics. You may also review Philosophizes this series on Slavoj Žižek, mainly spanning from episode 196 to episode 201. All data sources will be also linked in the description. If you enjoyed the episode, leave a like or a review or recommend it to your loved ones. For any comments or feedback, feel free to reach out on the social media at After the Dragon. I will try to get back to speed and deliver the next episode on time. So see you on the 13th of March.